Hello Year 10 and welcome to the final taught lesson of Physical Landscapes UK and Coasts, as next week will be revision and sitting the assessment. So I'll start with doing some dirt feedback on the 4 marker from this week. Now this was study figure 8, a photograph showing the sea defences in Devon. Now you needed to explain how sea defences such as those in the figure help protect the coastline. Now this is a 4-mark question, so you need to get stuck straight in by referring to the figure and then have 2 distinct explanations of 2 features that you can actually see that are protecting the coastline. Now we have a model answer that you can see in front of us from one of our students in the class. So they've done an absolute perfect 4 marker here for you to add to your dirt. So first of all, referring to figure 8, it is clear that there are 2 types of hard engineering strategies to protect the coastline in Devon. They are riprap and a sea wall. Riprap are large boulders placed along the base of a coastline to absorb energy from the waves and dissipate it back out to the sea. This will protect the area behind it as it reduces the harsh impact of the waves crashing against the coastline. The other method is a sea wall. It is a vertical or sloping structure used as a barrier to again reflect the waves' energy back out to sea and therefore protecting the coastline from further erosion. Absolutely smashing answer, so please add to yours and reflect on where you may have not got all of those marks. Right, as I said, this is the final taught content of this topic, and then next week you will be able to revise, and then when you feel ready, sit that test. So we all know how important teacher assessment is after what we've Year 11 and Year 13 have just sat, so I know you'll all take this very seriously. So let's get started. Now I'm going to show you some pictures and I'm going to pause and I'm going to ask you to write down which type of hard or soft engineering you think it is. So let's get started. Number 1. Pause the video here. This is rock armour. So you can see there it is hard, probably granite rock that is there to protect the coastline. Number 2. Pause the video here and have a go. This is a sea wall, excellent. So like in the model answer earlier, these are there to protect the coastline and deflect the waves' energy. Next one, pause here. This is a concrete groin. So this is stopping the movement of sediment through longshore drift, and it's a very strong one because some can be made of wood and they're not as strong as the concrete ones you can see here. And you can also see some people enjoying their fish and chips on there as well, which is lovely for them. I hope a large wave doesn't come along. And last but not least, pause the video here. This is managed retreat, so where you've got a low economic value area of land and you actually allow the sea to naturally flood it and become salt marshes. Okay, on to today's lesson. So today is a main case study. You've obviously got a week to complete this. Now the textbook pages you'll need is the double spread of page 112 to 113. This case study is Lyme Regis, and we're going to look at the different management strategies used and why they're used, and looking at the conflicts that have arisen from this, and then generally just evaluating what the effectiveness of this strategy to protect the area. So before you start, I would suggest having a read through the 2 textbook pages, and we'll come back to those. Now, alongside the PowerPoint and this video walkthrough, you will find a worksheet like the one on the screen now that you will be filling in as we go along. So first of all, whereabouts is it? So you can see here, Lyme Regis is a small coastal town on the south coast of England. It lies at the heart of the World Heritage Site known as the Jurassic Coast. This is one of the most spectacular stretches of coastline in the UK and famous for its fossils. The town is a popular tourist destination, and in summer the population of the town swells from 4,000 actual residents to 15,000, including all those visitors and people with a second home. Gosh, busy area. So the first part of your worksheet is asking what the issues are of Lyme Regis. So I'd like you to pause the video here and watch this video please, and then come back to me. So, although there is hard limestone beneath this area of Lyme Regis, there's actually lots of unconsolidated deposits on top of it, such as clays, which are very unstable, and you can see some evidence of mass movement in that picture there. So just to elaborate on that slightly and to add to your worksheet, like I said, you can see a layer of underlying limestone and shale, which is very hard, but on top of that are deposits of clays, sands and muds, and these are very unstable and can cause landslides and collapse. So in times of stormy weather with very destructive waves, this coastline gets entirely battered by hydraulic action. So hopefully you've written in your worksheet what the issues are, so we'll now move on to how the area has been managed. So again, there are 4 phases of this management process, and I'd like you to stop and watch this video here please before we get started. So pause me here please. So the Lyme Regis Environmental Improvement Scheme was set up by the West Dorset District Council in the early 1990s, and this was to give long-term protection for this area and reduce the threat to obviously homes and people of landslips. Now the work has only recently actually been completed. So like I said, there were 4 phases of this which you'll add to your worksheet. So phase 1, 1990s, this was the new sea wall and promenade, and an emergency project costing 1.4 billion to stabilise the cliffs. Phase 2, 2005-07, an extensive improvement made to the seafront, 22 million. You can have a read of what that entailed. Phase 3 was not undertaken. This was the initial plan to prevent landslips and coastal erosion to the west of the Cobb, were actually shelved. And then phase 4, which was the more recent and final phase, focused on the town improvements. That was £20 million, investing in a seawall at the front, which was very expensive, and some extensive nailing and piling and drainage to stabilise the cliffs and to protect those 480 homes that are exposed. So have a look at some of the images. You can imagine all of the environmental, economic and social impacts that this would have had during its construction. So if you just want to do some brief notes on those 4 phases, please. Now you'll find on your worksheet attached that there is a little sketch map of this area as well that shows the river Lyme going out to the mouth of the river there, and all of these different management processes, as well as the prevailing wind there coming in from the southwest. So the final parts, we're going to look at the successes and failures of this and do a brief evaluation. But if you fancy a super challenge, pause me here for a geographical genius test where you're going to practice your map skills. So I've put some 6-figure grid references on there, and I would like you to try to actually locate those. So hopefully you remember the old adage of along the corridor and up the stairs. So have a practice of those because you will need that for your test. Right, so there are lots of different positive and negative outcomes you'll find on your worksheet. I would like you to label whether they are positive or negative, and to make it a little bit more challenging, I'd like you to subcategorise it into our social, environmental and economic as to whether they were positive or negative in those areas. So hopefully you have completed that and you can check your answers. Now lastly, you'll see there, I want you to evaluate whether the coastal management scheme of Lyme Regis was actually worth it or not. So I want you to think, and I've put some helpful hints here of how you would potentially write it, but you must give both sides. So maybe give at least one reason why it was advantageous to the area, and then in a counter argument you could obviously argue why it was not, because it had huge disturbances environmentally and economically. Right, so the exam question I'd like you to have a go at this week, which will be submitted on Teams, is this 6 marker, and there is a mark scheme and a model answer to help you construct your own. So it's a hypotheses test. So coastal management schemes are effective in protecting the coastline from physical processes. Do you agree? So you need to use an example, so you'll use Lyme Regis to explain your answer. So it says that they are effective in preventing or protecting the coastline. So what you're going to want to think of is introducing your case study here and addressing the question. So Lyme Regis has been a very successful process, But once you've written about, after your introduction and you've written about the positive aspects, you're going to want to counter argue for a balanced argument with some of the not so positive or even negative impacts, such as the economic cost of this venture. And then just a brief conclusion. So no major projects like this are without their failures. Have a go at that, and obviously there is a model answer there colour coded to help you, guide you in answering this. Now that's pretty much it. So there are some textbook questions on the following slides in PowerPoint. I mean, they'd be great for revision, but they are optional because I know you're all incredibly busy, so at least have a read through them. So you've got an alternative 6-marker online Regis, which we've set out as your main body and your counter argument. There are some various exam questions that you can have a go at from the textbook, and we have provided model answers to help you. And just in case you've got idle thumbs and you're sitting there thinking, gosh, I wish I had more geography to do, there is a stretch yourself task here as well, and a little journal for you to have a read of. So in summary, I want you to have a look at some of these from this aerial photograph, some of these ways that we are preventing coastal erosion here. So you can see the groins, the sea wall, the barrier beaches. So it's a very well protected area. Well done, guys.